My name is Dr. Aris Thorne, and for the last 7 years, I've been listening to ghosts. Not the kind that rattle chains or whisper in dusty attics. I listen for the ghosts of dying stars, the faint residual whispers of cosmic events that happened billions of years ago. I'm a radio astronomer, and my job is to point a giant mechanical ear at the heavens and try to make sense of the symphony of silence. I work at the Atacama Grand Observatory, or AGO, perched high in the Chilean desert. Here, the air is so thin and dry it feels like it could crackle into dust. The sky at night isn't black. It's a terrifyingly deep, star-dusted velvet, so clear you feel like you could fall upwards into it. For a man like me, a man who has always felt more at home with the abstract and the distant, it was paradise. My obsession, my life's work, was built on the fringe theories of my late mentor, Dr. Alistair Finch. While the rest of the astronomical community was looking out, searching for extraterrestrial intelligence in the far-flung star systems of our galaxy, the SETI project, Alistair had a different, almost heretical idea. He believed we were looking in the wrong direction. "Aris," he'd say, his voice thick, with the smoke from his ever-present pipe, his eyes twinkling with a manic genius. "We're screaming into a cosmic hurricane, hoping for a whisper back. We're a tiny island shouting at a continent we can't even see. What if the message isn't out there? What if it's already here?" Alistair's theory was the geosynchronous echo. He posited that if a truly advanced, patient intelligence wanted to observe a developing world, it wouldn't send a clumsy, easily missed probe or a blast of radio waves from light years away. It would place a silent, dormant listening post near the planet, or, in his most radical hypothesis, within it. It would lie quiet for millennia, absorbing our development, our languages, our broadcasts, and only when we reached a certain technological threshold would it begin to subtly respond. It wouldn't shout. It would echo. He claimed that for decades a tiny, almost immeasurable anomaly existed in our planet's radio background noise. A signal that perfectly mimicked the sphere of our own radio transmissions but was infinitesimally delayed, as if reflected by a mirror. The scientific community ridiculed him. They called it statistical noise, instrument error, solar interference. They branded him a crank, and he died with his reputation in tatters, a cautionary tale for ambitious young astronomers. I was one of those ambitious young astronomers. He was my professor, my friend, and I believed him. After his death, I dedicated my career to finding his ghost. I used my position at AGO to run surreptitious piggybacked programs on the main array, searching for the anomaly. For 7 years, I found nothing but the cold, hard static of space and the quiet mockery of my colleagues. They called my project Thorne's Folly. I was a joke, the man chasing a ghost in the machine, until 6 weeks ago. It happened during a deep sky survey of the Buddha's void. The night was still, the air humming with the low thrum of the observatory's cryocoolers. I was alone in the control room, a cavern of monitors displaying cascading columns of data. My program was running in a single small window in the corner of my screen, a task I performed with the grim, joyless ritual of a man laying flowers on a forgotten grave. Then it happened. A spike. Not a sudden, sharp spike like a gamma-ray burst, but a slow, deliberate swell in the background radiation. It was exactly where Alistair predicted it would be, nestled in a quiet band of the radio spectrum. My heart hammered against my ribs. I ran the diagnostic. It wasn't solar flares. It wasn't a satellite. It wasn't atmospheric. The source was fixed, geosynchronous. It moved with the Earth, not with the stars. I brought up the triangulation software, my hands trembling so badly I could barely type. The computer churned through the data, cross-referencing with our partner observatories in Hawaii and Spain. The result was impossible. It defied physics. The signal's point of origin was plotted with a 99.97% accuracy. It wasn't in orbit. It wasn't on the surface. The source of the signal was 2,900 kilometers beneath the Earth's crust, deep in the planet's liquid outer core, at the boundary of the mantle. Alistair was right. Something had been listening, and now, for the first time, it was speaking, or rather, it was beginning to hum. This humming, this slow rise in energy, was what I came to call the proem. It lasted for 3 days. A single, pure, impossibly complex tone that resonated across 1,000 different frequencies. It contained more data than the entire Library of Congress, but it was encrypted, layered, folded in on itself in a way that made our most advanced cryptographic algorithms look like a child's pigpen cipher. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I couldn't announce this. Who would believe me? Good morning, world. A radio signal is coming from the center of the Earth. I'd be institutionalized. My data would be seized, buried, and explained away as the final desperate act of a man broken by his obsession. Alistair's fate would be mine, but worse. No. I had to understand it first. I had to crack it. The proem ended as abruptly as it began, and in its place the real message started. It was no longer a hum. It was a sequence, a deliberate patterned pulse. It was structured like a language. It was what Alistair had theorized, an echo. It was taking our own chaotic radio output, our TV shows, our military communications, our GPS signals, everything we'd leaked into space for the last century, and it was retransmitting it. But it wasn't a simple playback. It was curated, edited. It was sending back specific fragments, juxtaposed in a way that felt like a conversation. It sent back a snippet of a 1950s sitcom laugh track, followed immediately by a recording of J. Robert Oppenheimer quoting the Bhagavad Gita, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." It sent back the sound of a whale song, followed by the roar of a stock market floor. It was showing us a portrait of ourselves, a fractured, chaotic, beautiful, and terrifying collage of humanity. For a week I barely slept. I lived on black coffee and a growing sense of existential dread. I was the sole audience for a broadcast from a god buried in the heart of our own world. The signal was a mirror, and it was forcing me to look at our reflection. But why? What was the purpose of this grand planetary performance? The answer, I feared, was not one we were prepared for. The signal had a name, a title that it broadcast in a loop, encoded in the most fundamental language of all, mathematics. Using prime, numbers and fundamental constants like pi and the golden ratio, it spelled out its identity. It called itself the Custodian. But it was the second part of the message, the part that finally broke through my own decryption attempts a week later, that turned my dread into sheer terror. It was a date, a timestamp, and it was rapidly approaching. The Custodian wasn't just showing us who we were, it was giving us a deadline. It was a final exam, and I had the terrifying suspicion that humanity was about to fail. The first person I called was not a colleague. It was not a government official. It was a ghost, much like the one I had been chasing. Her name was Kaylin Reed, though she went by Kai. In the world of cryptography and theoretical linguistics, Kai was a legend, a myth, a prodigy who had deciphered 3 previously untranslatable ancient scripts before she was 25. She worked for the NSA, GCHQ, the kind of 3-letter agencies that don't officially exist. She was their skeleton. Key, the one they called when they faced a code that was truly unbreakable, and then she vanished. The official story was that she had a psychotic break, that the pressure of her work had shattered her mind. She became a pariah, another cautionary tale. But I knew people who knew people. The unofficial story was that she hadn't broken. She had discovered something she wasn't supposed to, a pattern hidden within global communications, a meta-language that suggested all of human history was being subtly manipulated. They didn't silence her, they discredited her. They made her a Cassandra, a prophetess no one would ever believe. She was perfect. I found her living in a rundown loft in Philadelphia, surrounded by towers of books on everything from Sumerian clay tablets to quantum computing. She was thin, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to see right through you, and a tattoo of the Voynich manuscript snaking up her arm. When I laid out my data, the printouts of the signal's waveform, my half-finished decryption algorithms, she didn't laugh. She didn't call for the men in white coats. She just stared at it, her expression unreadable. She walked around the table, her fingers tracing the complex fractal patterns of the broadcast. "Janus," she whispered, her voice raspy from disuse. "What?" I asked. The Roman god of beginnings, endings, and transitions, she said, tapping a section of the code I had marked as unintelligible noise. He looks to the future and to the past. This isn't just a reflection, it's a dialogue between what we were and what we are about to become. She looked up at me, and for the first time I saw a flicker of the fire that had made her a legend. You're calling this the Custodian signal. I'm calling it the Janus signal, and it's not a performance, it's an indictment. For the next 2 weeks, we worked in a feverish, sleep-deprived haze. Kai's mind was a thing of terrifying beauty. Where I saw mathematical structures, she saw grammar. Where I saw data, she saw poetry. She recognized patterns from extinct languages. She saw syntactical rules that hadn't existed on Earth for thousands of years. It's a palimpsest, she explained one night, gesturing wildly at a whiteboard covered in her scrawled equations and linguistic trees. The top layer is us, our radio noise. But underneath that, there are other layers, older signals, much, much older. Together, we peeled back the layers of the Janus signal. The first layer beneath our own was faint, almost eroded by time. It was a biological language based on the exchange of complex proteins and amino acids. It was the language of the dinosaurs. The signal contained a snapshot of their world, a planet teeming with colossal life, a world of lush, savage beauty. And it contained the record of their end, a single catastrophic event, a message of sudden, overwhelming shock and extinction. Beneath that layer, we found another, older still, a world of vast silica-based fungal forests covering the continents, communicating through a sprawling, planet-wide mycelial network. Their language was slow, patient, geological in its timescale. Their final message wasn't one of shock, but of slow, creeping despair as the planet's atmosphere changed, poisoning them over millions of years. We uncovered cycle after cycle, civilizations of the sea, of the air, of forms we couldn't even comprehend. Earth was not a gentle mother. It was a crucible, a laboratory where life was allowed to flourish, reach a certain point, and then face a test. A great filter. This is what the Custodian is, Kai said, her face pale in the glow of the monitors. It's not an alien. It's part of the planet's operating system. A dormant geological scale intelligence. A black box recorder for every evolutionary cycle. So the signal, it's a warning? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. It's more than a warning, Aris, she replied, her eyes dark. Look at the pattern. Every cycle ends when the dominant species reaches a specific threshold. Technological, sophistication, global impact, the ability to fundamentally alter the planetary environment, or the capacity for self-annihilation. She pointed to the date the signal was broadcasting. That's our appointment. We're next. The Custodian isn't just a recorder, it's the proctor of the exam. The pieces clicked into place with an audible, soul-crushing snap. The Oppenheimer quote, the whale song next to the stock market. It wasn't random. It was evidence. Exhibit A. A species intelligent enough to split the atom and harness its power for destruction. Exhibit B. A species that drives other intelligent life to extinction for profit. It was compiling a report on our suitability to continue. We had just over 3 weeks until the deadline. 3 weeks to decipher the ultimate question of the test, and somehow to answer for an entire species. Our work became more frantic. We were no longer just deciphering the past. We were trying to understand the nature of the test itself. Was it a pass, fail? Was there a weapon? Would the planet just shrug us off? A calibrated earthquake? A supervolcano? A magnetic field reversal? The Custodian had a ringside seat to every extinction event in Earth's history. It wouldn't need an asteroid. It could kill us with the subtlest of planetary shifts. Then, Kai made the final breakthrough. It was hidden in the most complex layer of the signal, a layer that seemed to predate life itself. It was a prime directive, a set of core principles encoded in the quantum state of the iron atoms in the planet's core. It's not a judge, she said, her voice filled with a strange mix of awe and terror. It's an archive. Its primary function is to preserve the record of life, not life itself. When a species reaches the filter, it's given a choice, a final query. She typed furiously, and a string of pure, elegant code appeared on the screen. It was a question, translated from the base language of mathematics and physics into human concepts. The question was this: present the justification for your continuation. Define the value of your consciousness. You may transmit one, and only one, reply. We stared at the screen. One reply. One chance to speak for all of humanity. To justify our existence to a planetary intelligence that had watched civilizations rise and fall like the tide. How do you do that? How do you encapsulate the entirety of human achievement, art, love, cruelty, and hope into a single broadcast? What message could possibly be enough? A message of our scientific achievements. A summary of our knowledge, from Newton to Einstein. That seemed arrogant. The Custodian had seen species with sciences we couldn't dream of. A message of peace and unity. That would be a lie. The signal itself was proof of our chaotic, violent nature. It's a trick question, I said, pacing the room. Any answer we give will be incomplete, arrogant, or dishonest. Maybe the test is to see if we're smart enough not to answer at all. Silence. Humility. No, Kai countered, her eyes blazing. Silence is consent. It's resignation. That's what the fungus creatures did. They just faded away. The dinosaurs screamed in shock. We have to do something different. The test isn't about what we are. It's about what we could be. The Janus signal looks to the past and the future. Our answer has to do the same. The debate raged between us for days. The deadline loomed, a ticking clock in the heart of the world. We were two insignificant humans, huddled in a dusty loft, trying to write a speech for the soul of our species. Argued for a message of logic. We should send the complete human genome, a testament to our biological complexity. We should send the Arecibo message, but improved, a clear and concise declaration of our place in the universe. It was the language. The Custodian understood. Data, structure, science. Kai argued for a message of chaos. She wanted to send art. The entirety of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. The cave paintings of Lascaux, digitized. A recording of a child laughing. A poem. She argued that our value wasn't in our logic, but in our glorious, beautiful, and often painful irrationality. In our capacity for love, for grief, for creating beauty for no reason other than to feel something. The Custodian has seen logic before, Aris, she yelled, her voice cracking with emotion. It's seen biological complexity. What it hasn't seen, what is unique to every cycle, is the texture of a consciousness, its art, its dreams, its pointless, beautiful hope. That's the only thing that's truly ours. We were at an impasse, with only 48 hours to go. The pressure was immense, a physical weight that made it hard to breathe. The world outside went on, oblivious. People went to work, fell in love, fought in wars, all unaware that their entire existence was being weighed in the balance by the planet beneath their feet. The breakthrough came, as it often does, not from a moment of brilliance, but from a moment of quiet exhaustion. It was 4 a.m. The city was silent. We sat across from each other, defeated. I was looking at the screen, at the elegant, terrifying question. Define the value of your consciousness. And then it hit me. It wasn't an either-or. It wasn't logic versus emotion. That was the trap. That was the binary thinking that led to our conflicts, our self-destruction. The value of our consciousness was its ability to hold both at once. To be a creature of science and of art, of reason and of faith. A being that can calculate the trajectory of a star and weep at a sunset. Kai, I said slowly, my heart starting to race again. We don't choose. We send both. Her head snapped up. We send everything, I continued, the idea taking shape. Not a curated, perfect message, not a lie. We send the truth. We create a new message, a new signal, a Janus signal, of our own. Our plan was audacious, perhaps insane. We couldn't possibly transmit all of human culture. But we could transmit the structure of it, We designed a fractal compression algorithm, a way to encode vast amounts of information into a single, dense package. The core of our message would be the human genome, the pure data of our biology, as I had wanted. But nested within it, woven into the very fabric of the DNA sequence using the junk DNA as a coding framework, would be Kai's contribution. We encoded Beethoven's Ninth, its message of struggle and ultimate, defiant joy. We encoded the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a statement of our highest aspirations, even if we failed to live up to them. We encoded the value of pi to 1,000,000 decimal places, a testament to our relentless curiosity. We encoded Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, the perfect synthesis of art and science. And we encoded thousands of other things, fragments of culture and knowledge, a mosaic of who we were. But we didn't just send our triumphs. That would be a lie. We also included the audio of the Hiroshima bombing. We included the UN reports on climate change. We included medical records of a cancer patient. We included recordings of arguments, of wars, of bigotry. Our answer was not a plea for mercy. It was a confession. It was a statement that said, "This is us, all of it, the sublime and the savage, the genius and the fool. Our value is not in our perfection, but in our struggle. Our consciousness is a process, a journey from the darkness into the light, and we are not at the end of that journey. We are fragile. We are flawed. We are capable of both unimaginable cruelty and breathtaking compassion. Judge us not on the finished product, but on our potential to become something better. Our value is the capacity for change." And at the very end of the message, we added one final simple thing. It was my idea, the only piece of pure, unadulterated human irrationality I insisted upon. It was a recording of a human heartbeat, a steady, rhythmic, living pulse, a sound of fragile persistence. With 1 hour to spare, we were ready. I used my credentials to hack into the AGO's main transmitter. Bypassing all the safeties and protocols, I aimed the massive dish not at the sky, but directly at the ground, firing a broadcast into the earth, an act that should have been pointless, like shouting at a mountain. Kai and I stood together in the control room, the monitors reflecting in our tired eyes. "Are we doing the right thing?" I whispered. "It's the only thing we can do," she replied. "We're sending the truth. The rest is up to whatever is down there." I hit enter. The power surged. The transmitter whined. For 10 minutes, our compressed fractal message, our confession and our hope, streamed into the crust of the planet. We sent our soul in a bottle, throwing it not into a cosmic ocean, but into the molten heart of our own home. And then, it was done. The transmission ended. We waited. We watched the monitor that displayed the Janus signal. Exactly at the deadline, the signal from the Earth's core stopped. Complete, absolute silence. The background static of the universe returned, loud and empty. The Custodian was gone. The silence was heavier than the signal had ever been. Days turned into a week. A week turned into 2. The world did not end. There were no earthquakes, no floods, no pillars of fire from the heavens. The stock market rose and fell. Wars continued. A new celebrity scandal dominated the news. Life, in all its chaotic, oblivious glory, went on. Kai and I were left in the anticlimax. Had it worked? Had we passed the test? Or was our message so irrelevant, so meaningless, that it wasn't even worthy of a response? Was the silence a sign of acceptance or of contempt? We had no way of knowing. The Custodian had closed the case. Earth's file was either stamped continue or thrown into the cosmic furnace. I returned to my official duties at the observatory, a ghost myself now, walking through the halls, carrying a secret that felt heavier than the planet itself. My colleagues noted my haggard appearance but attributed it to Thorne's folly finally getting the better of me. I let them. Kai went back to her loft in Philadelphia. We spoke every day, 2 members of a church with only 1 service and a congregation of 2. We pored over the old data, searching for a sign, a clue, an echo of the echo. We found nothing. The existential weight of not knowing was, in many ways, harder than the fear had been. We had stood on the precipice of annihilation, and now we were simply back, left to wonder if we had saved the world or just delayed the inevitable. Perhaps the test wasn't a single event. Perhaps it was ongoing. Perhaps we were now being observed more closely than ever, our every action logged against the promise we had made in our message, the promise of our potential. It was exactly 1 year after we sent our reply. I was on a late shift, performing a routine calibration of the main array. I was tired. The year had been long, filled with a quiet, gnawing uncertainty. I had almost accepted that we would never know. My screen flickered. An alert. A new signal had been detected. My blood ran cold. I thought, it's back. But the coordinates were wrong. My hands flew across the keyboard, triangulation software springing to life. The signal was not geosynchronous. It was not coming from inside the Earth. The source was deep space, far beyond our solar system. It was coming from the direction of Proxima Centauri. The signal was weak, barely distinguishable from the background noise, but it was unmistakably artificial. It was a simple repeating pattern, a mathematical pulse, a beacon. I ran a comparative analysis, cross-referencing it with the massive archive of the Janus signal I had stored on a secure server. My breath caught in my throat. The new signal, the one from the stars, was not the Custodian's language. It wasn't its complex, layered, ancient grammar. It was a fragment of our message. The Custodian had taken the final piece of our reply, the last thing we had sent, and it had broadcast it outwards. Across the silent void of space, from a distant star, a message was arriving. It was a simple, repeating loop, a cosmic hello from an unknown neighbor. It was the sound of a human heartbeat. We hadn't just passed the test. We hadn't just been allowed to continue. The Custodian, the silent ancient archivist of Earth, had judged us. And for the first time in planetary history, it had decided a species was ready. It had taken our confession, our hope, our messy, beautiful, contradictory soul, and it had forwarded our message. It had introduced us to the rest of the universe. The Janus signal wasn't an end. It was a beginning. My work, listening to ghosts, was over. The job of speaking to the living, to the vast, unknown, and now listening cosmos, had just begun. And I knew, with a certainty that was both exhilarating and terrifying, that humanity would never be alone again.